Hey everyone, I'm Cora. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here today doing this thing where I read a chapter of a book I'm not sure if I want to keep and decide if it is interesting enough to stay on my shelves or I guess in a stack on my floor right now. It was really a fucking pain in the ass to dig through my books and pull these out. I've got about 11 of them. This is something I did my first year on BookTube and I enjoyed it, and of course I always have stuff that I probably don't need because I just buy stuff, and sometimes my interests change, obviously. Sometimes I buy something because I think it might be interesting but it's on sale, and so I'm like, well, I might read this. Isn't it better to buy it while it's cheaper than to wait and then buy it full price? So like, this is kind of about my buying habits, about my interests changing. I don't know, I think maybe some of these I got as gifts. I don't know if any of them came from book boxes, but that's a possibility. Oh yeah, I think one of them did at least, or two of them. So what I'm gonna do is read the synopsis to you guys. Then I'm going to read the chapter on my own and come back and tell you a little more about the book and if I'm gonna read it. So top of the stack here we have New World Rising by Jennifer Wilson. This is the start to a series, which if you have watched my channel for a little while, you might know that I'm really not good at reading series. Sometimes I will get a book in. Well, a lot of the times I'll get a book in, and even if I really like the series, I'm just like not good at continuing on with them. So this already has kind of a strike against it because it's the start to a series. And this is young adult, which is something that I don't read as much of. I think that this is a dystopian book, which is fine, but I think this came off of like the waves that Hunger Games created, and I don't know if I really love YA dystopian. And it's really like stuff that came after Hunger Games, honestly, because, you know, when something gets big like that, there are a lot of followers. So anyways, the synopsis of this says, since witnessing her parents' murders at the age of 11, Phoenix's only purpose in life has been to uphold her mother's dying words, to be strong and survive, but surviving outside of the walls, outside of the sanctuary, is more like a drawn-out death sentence. A cruel and ruthless city, Tartarus, is run by the tribes whose motto is simply join or die. Refusing to join and determined to live, Phoenix fights to survive in this savage world. But who can she trust when no one can be trusted? Not even herself. So yeah, this, I mean, honestly sounds a little bit typical. And I guess I should say that I'm not doing this to like shit on a story or to shit on an author. I just, like I said, my interests change. I have a finite room for books. I need to get new bookshelves because mine were destroyed. And, I don't know. I know that mine were starting to get filled up. So if I can make room for stuff that's more of my interest and also pass these along to maybe somebody else who would enjoy this more than me, I'm gonna do that. So now I'm going to read a chapter of New World Rising and I will be back in a minute. Okay, so we're at the first chapter of New World Rising. It was about 15 pages, so not so bad. The font is fairly large, I guess. There's a lot of spacing in between the lines, so like it went pretty quickly. So, okay, well, first of all, I was really excited to see these drawings in the beginning of the book. They describe the different tribes that live in this city that Phoenix, the main character, lives in. Of course, she is orphaned in a dystopian city where all these natural disasters have kind of ruined the earth, and there's like acidic rain and these tribes ruling the city, and basically if you don't join one of the tribes, you kind of have a target on your back, and it seems like the tribes kill each other. I don't know. I don't think this one is for me. I kind of guessed it. Obviously it's on this list. The tone seems geared toward a younger audience that I'm interested in, and that's okay. That just means that I'm not the intended reader, which, like, obviously it's young adult. There's obviously some tropes that I'm just not very interested in. There's some really kind of cliche writing in here. For example, don't say nobody never did nothing for you. Like, I don't care about that kind of stuff, I guess. I'm looking for something maybe a little more creative, and I don't know. Like, this is a really great cover. I really like the artwork with the tribes. There's also, in the very beginning, a little drawing of the city Tartarus, but I just think that this one's not for me. Okay, so next up is The Hatching by Ezekiel Boone. I've had this one for quite a long time. It is a story, I believe, about, like, spiders taking over the planet. The reason this is really on this list, though, is that, I mean, I've had it for a long time and I haven't read it. But also, I read a different, more recent, I think the most recent book that Ezekiel Boone has put out. It was called The Mansion. I've talked about it a couple times on my channel, and I didn't like it at all. So now I'm not sure if I just didn't like The Mansion or if I don't really like Ezekiel Boone's work. So I'm going to find out and decide whether or not to keep this. The synopsis for this one says, "There's no waking up from this nightmare. Deep in the jungles of Peru, where so much remains unknown, a black skittering mass devours an American tourist hole." Okay. "Thousands of miles away, an FBI agent investigates a fatal plane crash in Minneapolis." Okay. "And makes a gruesome discovery. Unusual seismic patterns register in Kanpur, India. Earthquake lab Unusual seismic patterns register in a Kanpur, India earthquake lab, confounding the scientists there. During the same week, the Chinese government accidentally drops a nuclear bomb in an isolated region of its own country. As these incidents begin to sweep the globe, a mysterious package from South America arrives at a Washington, D.C. laboratory. Something wants out. The world is on the brink of an apocalyptic disaster. An ancient species, long dormant, is now very much awake. There's a reason we're afraid of spiders." Okay, so that sounds pretty intriguing. So now I'm going to read a chapter of The Hatching. Hopefully it's not very long. Man, I feel like maybe I did this book. I should have gone back and, oh no, I feel like I might have done this in the first time I did this, try a chapter unhaul thing. Oh boy. Well, let's see if I agree with my past self, if I really did do this. I could look, but I don't know. I'm gonna read a chapter. I read the prologue of The Hatching, and I think this is a caper. It was only about 7 pages long, and it's kind of, like the synopsis says, tells you about how some American tourists in Peru get attacked by spiders, and I think that I'm going to keep this one. I love books about creepy bugs. Okay, next on my list, this is some sort of YA fantasy. This is Roar by Cora Carmack. I don't remember where I bought this or when I bought this. It's been a while, clearly. So I'm gonna read you the synopsis of this. It says, Aurora Pavan comes from one of the oldest Stormling families in existence. Long ago, the ungifted pledged fealty and service to her family in exchange for safe haven, and a kingdom was carved out from the wildlands, and sustained by magic capable of repelling the world's deadliest foes. As the sole heir of Pavan, Aurora's been groomed to be the perfect queen. She is intelligent and brave and honorable, but she is yet to show any trace of the magic she'll need to protect her people. Okay, that's a pretty common trope. To keep her secret and save her crown, Aurora's mother arranges for her to marry a dark and brooding stormling prince from another kingdom. Okay. At first, the prince seems like the perfect solution to all her problems. He'll guarantee her spot as the next queen and be the champion her people need to remain safe. But the more secrets Aurora uncovers about him, the more a future with him frightens her. When she dons a disguise and sneaks out of the palace one night to spy on him, she stumbles upon a black market dealing with the very thing she lacks, storm magic. And the people selling it, they're not stormlings, they're storm hunters. Legend says that her ancestors first gained their magic by facing a storm and stealing part of its essence. And when a handsome young storm hunter reveals he was born without magic but possesses it now, Aurora realizes that there's a third option for her future besides ruin or marriage. She may not have magic now, but she can steal it if she's brave enough. Okay, that actually sounds pretty interesting. With an arranged marriage to a maybe sinister person and the power to steal your own power, I guess. I'm going to read the first chapter of this and tell you what I think. Okay, I'm back. I read the first chapter of Roar by Cora Carmack. This one was about 13 pages long. And I actually think that this is going in my keep pile, despite the ridiculous name. The writing was good, and I was interested in what the story had to tell me. This is about a woman named Aurora who is the heir to a kingdom. There are several other kingdoms in this place, and they're all ruled by people who have this power to control these storms that plague the continent, I guess. Different kind of storms like firestorms and blizzards and lightning storms. And this young woman does not have any power to control any storm, but her suitor, I guess, in this arranged marriage that she's entering does not know that. They're kind of trying to, I guess, lie to the family and hope to garner this marriage so that the man she's marrying, who can control storms, will be able to protect her kingdom once she becomes queen. And I liked it. I think that I'm going to keep this, and I'm actually glad that I picked this up and decided to include this in this video because I really enjoyed reading this first chapter more than I thought that I would. Okay, so next here is a thriller that I have. This is called The Ice Twins by Sk Tremaine. I've had this also for years. Let's see what the synopsis says. One of Sarah's daughters died, but she can't be sure which one. Okay, that is very intriguing right from the start. A lot of these, like, I forget what they're about sometimes if I've had them for too long. Like, I might have picked it up for a reason because something seemed interesting about it to me, or somebody, like, I heard a recommendation somewhere, but I don't really remember what it's about. That's definitely the case with this one. This says, a year after one of their identical twin daughters, Lydia, dies in an accident, Angus and Sarah Moorcroft move to a tiny Scottish island. Angus inherited from his grandmother, hoping to put together the pieces of their shattered lives. But when their surviving daughter, Kirsty, claims they may have mistaken her identity, that she, in fact, is Lydia, their world comes crashing down once again. As winter encroaches, Angus is forced to travel away from the island for work. Sarah is feeling isolated, and Kirsty, or is it Lydia, is growing more disturbed. When a violent storm leaves Sarah and her daughter stranded, Sarah finds herself tortured by the past. What really happened on that fateful day when one of her daughters died? Okay, this is more interesting than I expected. I don't think I've ever read something with that sort of a plot where, yeah, a twin is pretending to be the other. Or have I actually, now that I think about it? Maybe not a thriller in that vein, but definitely a horror book. So I'm gonna read the first chapter of this. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back after reading the first chapter of The Ice Twins by Sk Tremaine. The story really gets right into the story. We start out and the two adults in this, Sarah and Angus, the parents of the alive and deceased twins, Kirsty and Lydia. Which one is which, we do not know. What was I saying? Oh, so they're going through the legal stuff to take control of this little island that they decide to move to in Scotland. I like the writing. Obviously that first chapter is not extremely exciting, but it does nicely weave together some of the past and the present, how these people met each other, not what happened to their twins, but the early life of their twins a little bit. And at the very end of the chapter is when we kind of get the bomb drop that Kirsty says that she's not Kirsty. Kirsty is Lydia, and Kirsty is the one who's dead, not Lydia. So I'm really curious as to how that's going to unfold. I think I'm going to keep this one. I do enjoy reading books written by people who live outside of the United States and North America. I would like to continue to do that. And I am interested in this Kirsty Lydia thing. When I was in elementary school, we had identical triplets in my grade. And one of them always wore a green sweatshirt. And sometimes one of the other triplets would wear that green sweatshirt and show up to class and pretend to be his brother, and nobody fucking knew. It was really crazy. So that's on the keep pile. Okay, what's next here? Okay, so this is another YA book. I think that this came in a book box at some point. This is Catching Stars by Kayla Keenan. It says, "Be afraid of witches." So the synopsis of this says, Jayan Ejad is hiding, a witch with powerful abilities. She carves out a life for herself in the slums of Paval, a city rotting from the inside out. When an old acquaintance tracks her down, Jayan is dragged back into the world she tried to escape and is determined to escape again. Maddox Kella's on the run. After 2 years in prison for crimes he did not commit, Maddox escapes and seeks out a legendary order of witch hunters who are his only chance to find justice. But all is not as it seems, and Maddox soon finds himself on the run from the people he sought as allies. When their paths collide, Jayan and Maddox must put aside their prejudices and forge an uneasy alliance that could crumble at any moment. But if they want to survive in Aestos, a brutal kingdom where magic and corruption lie hand in hand and enemies lurk around every corner, they must survive each other first. Okay, so a couple different tropes here. We see the multiple viewpoints, where I'm assuming that this becomes probably a book where these two people get into a relationship with each other. Yeah, of course, the like underground sorcery kind of stuff. I also I have a pet peeve about stuff in fantasy, names in fantasy, not necessarily. This seems like it might be South Asian inspired, which is fine if there's South Asian names in here. Obviously, those are their names. But what I cannot stand in fantasy books is where there are fantastical names, like made-up names, that are super hard to pronounce, because my mind just like gets caught on that. And I have to sound it out every time and ponder like how it could possibly be fucking said. And my brain just like cannot let it go. Hopefully that is not the case. in this with any of the main characters, but I'm going to read the first chapter here. I really do love the color of this book is really nice, like a dusk color. But I'm gonna read the first chapter and I'll be right back. So I'm back after the first chapter. It's actually a prologue of Catching Stars by Kayla Keenan. And the prologue is only 8 pages long, not too long. And it takes place from the point of view of Maddox. It looks like alternating chapters. The story is told in alternating chapters by the 2 main characters here. So Maddox is part of the guardsmen. I'm assuming this is kind of like a military police kind of force, like old-timey kingdom stuff. And he is possessed by a demon and kills a bunch of people, and that's why he's sent to prison. So this is happening, and there's also just like a lot of information about the kingdom, or the world that they live in, and about witches, and how this guy thinks that witches shouldn't exist and he's glad that they're dying out. I don't know. It felt a little clunky. There is a little bit of dialogue in here, and it's all very just like stuff that I would write if I was writing a book. And I don't mean that to be disparaging to the author, because I know it's hard work to write a book, I'm sure. But it's just like it's not anything I haven't read before, you know what I mean? This seems like any other kind of young adult fantasy type of a thing. I'm just really sure, I'm really certain that these 2 characters are going to fall in love with each other, and like I just don't really care about that, I guess. It just seems like something that maybe somebody who is starting out in young adult fantasy and hasn't read a lot of it, or really loves these sort of tropes would like, and I'm just not that person right now. So this beautiful cover, Catching Stars, Kayla Keenan, is going to find a better home than mine. Okay, so this book has kind of been haunting my dreams. Not really. It's been haunting my bookshelf. I really fucking hate the cover of this. It is so creepy, and I think they're playing on that like tryptophobia or whatever it is, which I don't think I have. I just think things like this fucking look so gross and creepy. So this, I'm not sure if this is a horror book or dark fantasy or what. I'm gonna read you the synopsis, and then, obviously I'm gonna read the first chapter and find out what this says. The doors to the Empire Museum closed decades ago, but in the ochre glow of pyre beetle lanterns, the exhibits still stare and occasionally move. Fueled by the sweat of the low-caste factory workers, the city of brine hovers over the edge of 1,000 mill wheels fueled by the twice-daily cascade of tidal waters. Okay, that is a lot to take in there for some reason. In brine, even death cannot end toil. The carcasses of horses blankly pull the cabs of the wealthy. Dead workers lurch in factories, fueling the ever-growing empire. Okay, this sounds more interesting after those couple sentences. With no more land to claim, the puppet queen has decreed another kind of expansion, a darker path into the lands between. But in the shadow of the empire's expansion, this new land's strange inhabitants stare hatefully out at the invaders. Slowly they begin to step out of the reflections, out of the smog-shrouded alleys, fighting back. And in the museum, dead things begin to stir once more. Okay, so this does sound like a dark fantasy book. Boy, it sure is a long one. Over 500 pages. I kind of cheated because I did not read the full first chapter because it was like 40 pages long, and this is one of those books with long pages, and I still have 5 books after this, and I just cannot spend that much time doing this today. But I think I'm going to keep this. So far we meet a character named Jared. He seems like he is kind of dealing with the underbelly of the city, of course, another trope. One that I don't dislike though, I guess. And it seems like the city is going to be well fleshed out. Maybe not in the part of the first chapter that I read, but it was interesting enough to where, like, if I had more time, I would have read the full chapter. And this seems like it's a dark fantasy in a creepy city. It sort of reminds me of the city in the Mistborn series, but also I'm reading that, you know, maybe that's just because I've been reading it. I hate this cover so much. Like, I just want to tape something over it, but I'm going to keep this book and hopefully eventually get to it. Okay, next on my list is this YA sci-fi book I've had for a while. This is Diabolic by Sk Tremaine. Let's read the motherfucking synopsis. A diabolic is ruthless. A diabolic is powerful. A diabolic has a single task: kill in order to protect the person you've been created for, nothing else. For Nemesis, that person is Sidonia, heir to the Galactic Senate. The two grew up side by side, and there's no one Nemesis wouldn't kill to keep her safe. But when the power-mad Emperor summons Sidonia to the Imperial Court as a hostage, there's only one way for Nemesis to protect Sidonia. She must become her. Padme Amidala? Okay. Now, one of the galaxy's most dangerous weapons is masquerading in a world of corrupt politicians and two-faced senators' children, and Nemesis must find within herself one thing she's been told: she doesn't have humanity. With the Empire beginning to fracture and rebellion looming, that could be the one thing that saves her and the Empire itself. So this does sound a little different than a lot of, I don't think I've read a ton of YA sci-fi, but this is different than I was expecting. So I'm going to read this first chapter and I'll be right back. Okay, here I am after the first chapter of The Diabolic by Sk Tremaine. This is intriguing to me. The main character here, Nemesis, is something that's like genetically engineered, and they say that they're not human, but it is basically a human. It has a human brain, it has human body parts. The only difference is that it's genetically engineered to be stronger and kind of be bodyguards for whoever they're hired to protect, or whoever buys them as protection is more like it. It's kind of weird, this beginning. It's almost like she's a horse and they're talking about her breeding, and she lives in this place, and there is somebody called a corral master who is like brokering the deal with these people who are buying her. And it's like really weird to imagine a human in a stable. I mean, that's just my brain. And, you know, the people want to watch her perform to make sure she can protect their daughter, who they're buying Nemesis to protect. And it's a little bit violent in a way that I like, and it seems like it's going to be good, I hope. This is the start to a series, which does make me hesitant, because if I get involved in this, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm not obligated to read all the books, but I think this one is going to stay on my shelves for now. Next up is this thriller I've had that I don't know about this one. This is #Murder Trending by Gretchen McNeil. I do not know if this is a YA thriller or not. I feel like it might be, but it might not be. What does the synopsis say? 50 million people are about to watch me die. As the judge read her sentence, she'd heard the bailiff come up behind her. She'd expect, I don't know, does this seem, it's like hard for my brain to read this. Does this sound weird to you guys? She'd expected to be escorted back to her cell, but instead felt a hand on her wrist, a pinch on her arm. It must have been a needle. She'd been rendered unconscious before they hauled her off to Alcatraz 2.0. Alcatraz 2.0. She'd heard the judge say it, but she could hardly believe it. The sentence was usually reserved for the most infamous of convicted killers, mobsters, mass murderers, terrorists, assassins. They were notorious. They were dangerous. They got good ratings. Dee was just a 17-year-old nobody who couldn't even throw a punch, let alone stay alive long enough on Alcatraz 2.0 to gain a cult following. Yet here she was, about to be the star attraction on the #1 live streaming show in the country. Okay. This does sound more interesting. For some reason that synopsis was tripping me up though. I had to read that first paragraph like 3 times. Okay, it looks like it does have some interesting formats here where there are some parts in like instant messaging, and there are like graphs and emails and stuff like that, which always attracts me to a book. I'm gonna read the first chapter. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so surprisingly, I really enjoyed the first chapter of this book. It seems like it might have some interesting things to say about our society, which is maybe not quite as extreme as this society, where they literally broadcast the deaths of prisoners in Alcatraz. So when you're sentenced to time in Alcatraz, there are basically a bunch of murderers there who will kill you. It's not like the inmates murdering each other like I kind of maybe thought it would be from the synopsis, but it sounds a lot like a book I recently read called Paradise Club, where there are people specifically sent there to kill these people. So they're like crazy serial killers. And in this very first chapter, she meets somebody named Prince Slicer, who's dressed up like Prince Charming from Cinderella and who tries to kill her. So I'm interested so far. She, the main character Dee, she's in there because she's been accused of murdering her stepsister, and you get the hint that maybe Dee herself has some trauma in her past, and that stop it, that might be something that people are using to pin the murder on her. Like, she went through this trauma, of course she was going to explode at some point, type of a thing. So this is going to stay on my shelves. Yeah, I think that this is a book that's not gonna take itself too seriously, but might have an interesting message. I'll have to read the whole thing and see at some point. Is this really big book. This is Omens by Kelly Armstrong. I don't really know what this is about. I do know that it's the beginning of a series, and I think there is like a paranormal thing going on in this. The synopsis says, 24-year-old Olivia Taylor-Jones has a perfect life. The only daughter of a wealthy, prominent Chicago family, she has an Ivy League education, pursues volunteerism and philanthropy, and is engaged to a handsome young tech firm CEO with political ambitions. Holy shit, that is crazy for a 24-year-old. But Olivia's world is shattered when she learns that she is adopted. Her real parents, Todd and Pamela Larson, notorious serial killers serving life sentences. When the news brings a maelstrom of unwanted publicity to her adopted family and fiancé, Olivia decides to leave her once comfortable home and find out the truth about the Larsons. Olivia ends up in the small town of Canesville, Illinois, an old cloistered community that takes particular interest in both Olivia and her efforts to uncover her birth parents. Aided by her mother's former lawyer, Gabriel Walsh, Olivia focuses on the Larsons' last crime, the one her birth mother swears will prove their innocence. But as she and Gabriel start investigating the case, Olivia finds herself drawing on abilities that have remained hidden since her childhood. Gifts that make her both a valuable addition to Canesville and deeply vulnerable to unknown enemies, because there are darker secrets behind her new home and powers lurking in the shadows that have their own plans for her. This is another beginning to a series. I'm going to read a chapter and see if I like it. I read the prologue and the first chapter of this, which ended up being not very long at all. 11 pages. This one I'm not really sure about. The writing is pretty simplistic, and this prologue and the first chapter don't tell you much about the story that you're getting into. It's mostly, well, the prologue I'm pretty sure is supposed to be the main character as a child as she is being taken away from her birth parents. And the first chapter is the main character at a job that she's working right now. I don't know, that's it. So I think this one I might hold on to and ask if anyone's read it and what they thought about it. I might look at some more reviews, maybe see if I could find an audiobook of it, because that does tend to help if I'm planning on reading something that I'm not 100% sure if I'll like, you know what I mean? So this is on a maybe pile. I don't know about that one. Okay, next up is this book, Everland by Wendy Spinelli. I think this is like a Peter Pan retelling. It says, London has been destroyed in a blitz of bombs and disease. The only ones who have survived the destruction and the outbreak of a deadly virus are children. Among them, 16-year-old Gwen Darling and her younger siblings, Joanna and Mikey. John and Michael. And Wendy Darling. They spend their nights scavenging and their days avoiding the deadly marauders, the German army led by the cutthroat Captain Hans Otto Oswald Kretschmer. Unsure if the virus has spread past England's borders, but desperate to leave, Captain Hook is on the hunt for a cure. Oh, okay. Captain Hook. Hans Otto Oswald Kretschmer. It's, his initials. Is on the hunt for a cure, which he thinks can be found in one of the surviving children. He and his marauders stalk the streets, snatching children for experimentation, none ever returning, until one day they grab Joanna. Gwen will stop at nothing to get her sister back, but as she sets out, she crosses paths with a daredevil named Pete. Pete offers the assistance of his gang of lost boys and a fierce sharpshooter, Bella, who have all been living in a city hidden underground. But in a place where help has a steep price and every promise is bound by blood, it might cost Gwen more than she bargained for. And are Gwen, Pete, the Lost Boys, and Bella enough to outsmart the ruthless Captain Hook? This sounds more interesting than I expected. Like, I knew it was a Peter Pan retelling, but let's see. Let's see how this goes. Okay, I'm back after the first chapter of Everland by Wendy Spinelli. It was 14 pages long, not too long, and I think this is going to go into my not keeping pile. And I thought the writing was okay. It's kind of an interesting setup with these characters, you know, into being a retelling of Peter Pan. They're in kind of a steampunky London. These children are effectively orphaned. They don't know if their parents are alive or not. And of course, the chapter ends with the discovery that her sister Joanna is missing. I don't know if I would enjoy spending time with this book. You know what I mean? I think the writing seems fine, but I just think that this is better suited for an audience that is not me. Last but not least, I have here Infected by Sk Zigler. This is another one I've had probably 7-8 years, haven't read. Oh my god, it's terrible. Okay, I'm gonna read you the synopsis. A mysterious disease is turning thousands of ordinary Americans into raving, paranoid murderers who inflict brutal horrors on strangers, their own families, and even themselves. And one morning, ex-football star Perry Dawsey awakens to find mysterious welts growing all over his body. Soon Perry finds himself acting and thinking strangely, hearing voices, fighting uncontrollable rage. He is infected. Worse, the disease wants something from him, something that could alter the fate of the human race. So this sounds kind of maybe like a sort of zombie novel. Oh my god, I just had to yawn and sneeze at the same time, which kind of hurt my nose. Okay, sorry. All right, here we go. Okay, I am back after finishing the prologue in the first chapter of Infected by Sk Zigler. This one is also going to go on the maybe pile. So if you've read this and you really liked it, let me know if you think I should keep it or not. Or if you've read it and didn't like it, let me know that too. Because I'm not super impressed with the writing here. And I have read a couple short stories by Sk Zigler and wasn't like overly impressed with the writing there either. I don't know. Neither of these chapters, the prologue and the first chapter, are about the person that this book talks about in the back, who I would assume is going to be the main character. So it's like hard to get a grasp on what this might be like and what kind of a character this main character might be. So yeah, I'm kind of up on the fence about it. However, I am really intrigued by this, whatever this is, people being obsessed with triangles and killing people. I'm interested in the triangles, I guess. I want to know about the triangles, so do let me know if this is a book that you either disliked or really liked, and whether or not this is worth keeping. Overall, 3 books that are going to be finding new homes: New World Rising, Catching Stars, Everland. 2 books that I might get rid of. I'm not sure yet. Omens and Infected. Actually, more books than I thought are going back on my shelves. We've got The Hatching, Roar, Hashtag, Murder Trending, The Diabolic, and Crooked and the Ice Twins. I thought I'd be relieving myself of more books. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you've thought about these. Even the ones that are definitely like a maybe, let me know if you've read and liked any of these or if you didn't like them, because you can't always tell, I guess, from the first chapter whether a book is going to be a knockout or not. And I might be convinced either way to keep something or get rid of something if enough people tell me that it's is or isn't worth it, I guess. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys later. Goodbye!